The courtroom erupted in applause the moment the judge said the words, "Case dismissed." People smiled. Cameras flashed. My husband exhaled like a man reborn. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt something cold crawl up my spine, like my life was about to be erased. Because exactly 1 hour later, the man who had just won everything looked me in the eye and made sure I lost absolutely everything. I still remember how tightly I was gripping my purse as we walked down the courthouse steps. My fingers were numb, not from the cold, but from 10 months of fear finally loosening its grip. 10 months of sleepless nights, of reporters parked outside our home, of friends quietly disappearing. 10 months of me standing beside him in silence while the world called him a criminal. I defended him when no one else did. I testified. I emptied my savings. I lost my job. And there we were, free. He smiled for the cameras. He shook hands with his lawyers. Someone slapped him on the back and said, "You're a lucky man." He nodded, didn't look at me. We got into the car. The doors closed. The noise outside vanished. Just the low hum of traffic and the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. "That was hell," I whispered, finally allowing myself to breathe. He didn't answer. I turned toward him expecting a smile. Maybe a thank you, something, anything. Instead, he stared straight ahead and said calmly, almost bored, "We need to talk." That sentence still haunts me. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't look angry. That was the worst part. His tone was flat, like he was discussing a grocery list. "I've been thinking about this for a long time," he continued, "and today made things clear." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" I asked, forcing a laugh. He finally looked at me then. His eyes were distant, calculating. "This whole thing," he said, gesturing vaguely behind us, "made me realize I need a fresh start. I waited for the rest. It didn't come." "A fresh start? With me?" I asked. He shook his head once. Sharp, final. "No, without you," the world went silent. I remember staring at him, trying to process the words, convinced I had misheard. We had been married for 12 years. I had stood beside him through debt, through humiliation, through this entire nightmare. I had put my own life on pause so he could survive. "You're joking," I said. He didn't smile. "I've already spoken to my attorney," he said. "The paperwork is ready." My hands started shaking. "You waited until after the verdict." I whispered. "Yes," he replied simply. "I didn't want distractions. Distractions. That's what I was." I laughed then. A broken, hysterical sound escaped my mouth before I could stop it. "You needed me when you were on trial," I said. "But now that you're free, I'm disposable." He sighed, like I was exhausting him. "You've changed," he said. "This whole thing changed you." I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip the steering wheel out of the car. But instead, I went quiet. Because deep down, I knew the truth. I hadn't changed. He had just stopped needing me. We didn't even go home together. He dropped me off. Outside our house. The same house I had helped pay for. The same house I had defended him in. And drove away without looking back. I stood there on the sidewalk, my purse in one hand, my phone in the other, watching his car disappear down the street. The locks were already changed. I stood there knocking for nearly 20 minutes before it hit me. He had planned this. Every detail, the timing, the silence, the cruelty. I sat down on the front steps and cried until my chest hurt. That was the day I became homeless, without ever seeing it coming. The next few weeks blurred together in a haze of humiliation and loss. The bank accounts were frozen, the joint credit cards canceled. My name removed from everything that mattered. Friends I had known for years suddenly didn't answer my call. His colleagues avoided me. Even my own family told me gently that maybe I should have seen the signs earlier. I applied for jobs and never heard back. I slept on couches. I carried my life in a suitcase. Everywhere I went, I felt like a ghost. Someone people recognized but didn't want to acknowledge. One night, after being told I couldn't stay just one more day, I found myself sitting in my car in a grocery store parking lot, staring at my reflection in the rear-view mirror. I didn't recognize the woman staring back. dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back into feet, clothes worn thin from stress and repetition. I had gone from stability to survival in less than a month. And the worst part, he was thriving. I saw him on social media, smiling, traveling, giving interviews about resilience and new beginnings. People called him brave, inspirational. No one asked where his wife had gone. One night, it finally happened. My car wouldn't start. The engine clicked uselessly as the cold crept in through the windows. I checked my phone. 1% battery. No missed calls. No messages. I wrapped my coat tighter around myself. My last decent coat. The one I'd bought years ago for a winter trip we never took. I sat there for hours watching people come and go, carrying groceries, laughing, living lives that felt impossibly far away. That was the night I realized I had truly lost everything. And that was the night I stepped out of my car and walked straight into the moment that would change my life forever. First night I slept outside, I told myself it was temporary. That lie was the only thing keeping me warm. I parked my dead car behind a closed grocery store, pulled my suitcase onto the back seat, and curled up like a child pretending this was an adventure. I counted my breaths, counted the cracks in the ceiling. I told myself the sun would rise and everything would somehow fix itself. It didn't. Morning came with a sharp knock on the window. A security guard told me I couldn't stay there. He wasn't rude, that somehow made it worse. I dragged my suitcase across the asphalt, every wheel scream echoing how broken I felt inside. My phone finally died. I had $23 in my wallet and nowhere left to go. I walked, block after block, street after street. People passed me without seeing me. I blended into the background. Another woman with a bag. Another problem no one wanted. By noon, my hands were shaking from hunger. I bought the cheapest sandwich I could find and ate it sitting on the curb, trying not to cry while people stepped over me. That was when it hit me. This wasn't a bad week. This wasn't a rough patch. This was my new reality. I tried shelters. They were full, or unsafe, or both. One woman looked at my coat and said, "You'll be fine. People like you always land on their feet." She didn't know this was the last good thing I owned. That night, the temperature dropped hard. Winter didn't ease in. It attacked. The kind of cold that crawls under your skin and refuses to leave. I found a bench near a bus station. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The smell of exhaust and old coffee filled the air. I hugged my suitcase like it was a person who might protect me. I didn't sleep. I watched the clock change. I listened to footsteps slow as the night deepened. At some point, the tears came, quiet at first, then violent. My chest hurt. My hands shook. I pressed my face into my coat so no one would hear me break. I thought about calling my husband. I imagined his phone lighting up with my name. I imagined him pausing, then declining the call. I never dialed. By the third night, my body started giving up. My feet were blistered. My head pounded. I hadn't showered. I avoided mirrors because I couldn't handle seeing what I was becoming. I slept in my car once it was towed to a public street. I slept sitting up, my neck bent at an angle that left me sore for days. I dreamed of courtrooms and locked doors and his voice saying, "Without you." I woke up screaming once. No one came. On the fourth night, it rained. Cold, sharp rain that soaked everything. I stood under a broken awning outside a closed motel, watching water drip off the hem of my coat. My hands were numb. My lips were blue. That coat was all that stood between me and hypothermia. I had paid good money for it once. It was wool-lined, heavy, warm. It smelled like my old life. Laundry detergent, stability, safety. I wrapped it tighter around myself and whispered, "Please." I don't know who I was begging. By early morning, I was done. I sat on a bench near the highway, my suitcase at my feet, my head in my hands. Cars rushed by, full of people with destinations. I felt invisible, less than invisible, like a burden the world had misplaced. I thought about ending it. Not dramatically, not violently, just not waking up, letting the cold take me, letting exhaustion win. I stared at my hands and realized they didn't look like mine anymore. That's when I heard the voice. Excuse me. I looked up slowly, annoyed, tired, ready to be asked for money I didn't have. Instead, I saw her. She was standing a few feet away, thin as a shadow, wrapped in layers of mismatched clothing. Her hair was gray and tangled. Her shoes were falling apart. Her hands trembled as she clutched a paper cup. Her eyes, though, they were sharp. Calm. Too calm. I'm sorry to bother you, she said softly. You look colder than I am. I almost laughed. I don't have anything, I said. No money. She shook her head. I'm not asking for money. I frowned. She looked at my coat. That, she said, that's a good coat. I followed her gaze. Instinctively, I pulled it tighter around myself. I need it, I said. She nodded. I know. Something in her voice made my throat tighten. She hesitated, then spoke again. I haven't been warm in days. I thought maybe you could help. I stared at her. My brain screamed no. Every survival instinct I had flared up. This coat was my last line of defense. Without it, I didn't know if I'd make it through the night. I'm sorry, I said, turning away. I really am. She didn't argue. She just smiled sadly and said, I understand. She took a step back. That should have been the end of it, but something broke inside me. I don't know why. Maybe it was the way she accepted no without bitterness. Maybe it was the way she looked at me like she saw me. Not as trash, not as invisible. I thought about who I used to be. The woman who helped strangers. The woman who believed kindness mattered. The woman I barely recognized anymore. I stood up. Wait, I said. She turned. I took a breath that felt like tearing something out of my chest and started unbuttoning my coat. Her eyes widened. You don't have to. I know, I said. My hands shook as I slid it off. The cold bit into me instantly. But you need it more. I placed the coat around her shoulders. It swallowed her frame. She gasped as the warmth hit her. She looked at me like I'd just saved her life. I was freezing. Thank you, she whispered. Her voice cracked. I nodded, unable to speak. She reached into her pocket, then stopped. I don't have anything to give you. That's okay, I said. She studied my face carefully, like she was memorizing it. You're stronger than you think, she said quietly. Then she turned and walked away. No promise, no reward, no miracle, just gone. I stood there, shaking, hugging myself, wondering if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life, or the most important one. I didn't know it yet, but that woman wasn't who she appeared to be, and giving her my last coat was about to rewrite everything. The cold hit me immediately. The moment the coat left my shoulders, it felt like the night lunged at me. My skin tightened. My breath turned sharp and shallow. I wrapped my arms around myself, pretending it was enough. It wasn't. I watched her walk away. Slow steps, hunched shoulders, the coat dragging slightly behind her like it was too heavy for someone her size. She didn't look back, not once. And just like that, she was gone. I stood there on the sidewalk, shaking, my teeth chattering so hard my jaw hurt. Every rational thought screamed that I had made a stupid, reckless decision. That coat wasn't just fabric. It was warmth. It was safety. It was survival. And I had handed it away. I sat back down on the bench, pulling my thin sweater tighter around my body. The metal seeped cold straight through my clothes. My fingers were numb within minutes. I tried rubbing them together, breathing into my hands, anything to stay conscious. I kept telling myself it would be okay. I didn't believe it. Minutes passed, or hours. Time stopped making sense when your body was focused on one thing. Don't freeze. I thought about her words. You're stronger than you think. I almost laughed out loud. Strength didn't keep you warm. Strength didn't buy food. Strength didn't fix a broken life. By the time the sky started to lighten, I was barely aware of where I was. My head drooped forward. My vision blurred at the edges. I remember thinking vaguely, so this is how it ends. A siren in the distance jolted me awake. I forced myself to stand. My legs buckled immediately, and I had to grab the bench to keep from falling. Pain shot up my calves like fire. I limped away, dragging my suitcase behind me, not sure where I was going, only that I couldn't stay there. I found a 24-hour diner just as the sun was rising. I sat in a corner booth, ordered a cup of coffee I couldn't really afford, and wrapped my hands around the mug like it was a lifeline. The waitress looked at me for a long moment. "You okay, honey?" she asked. I nodded. It was a lie. I left before she could ask anything else. The next few days were brutal. Without the coat, everything was harder. The cold settled into my bones. My cough started as a tickle and turned into something deeper. I avoided places where people lingered, afraid someone would tell me to move along. I looked for her. I don't know why. Maybe part of me wanted proof that my sacrifice meant something. Maybe I just needed to know she was okay. I checked the bus station, the park, the shelters. No one had seen her. She owned a coat like that? One man asked, laughing. Must have moved up in the world. That night, I slept in my car again. I layered newspapers over my legs. It didn't help much. I stared at the ceiling and replayed the moment over and over. Her eyes, her voice, the way she had studied my face. It felt unfinished, like a chapter torn out of a book. On the 5th day, something strange happened. I was standing outside a public library, trying to warm up in the sunlight, when a black sedan pulled up across the street. I barely noticed it at first. Black cars weren't unusual, but then it didn't leave. The engine stayed running, windows tinted. No one got out. I shrugged it off. An hour later, when I walked 2 blocks to a soup kitchen, the same car was there, parked. Waiting, my stomach tightened. I ducked inside, ate quickly, and slipped out the back. The car was gone. That night, as I curled up in my car, headlights swept briefly across the windshield, then disappeared. I told myself I was paranoid, but the feeling didn't go away. Over the next week, it kept happening. Different locations, same kind of car. Always black, always quiet, never close enough to confront. I started sleeping lighter, listening, watching. One morning, I found something tucked into my suitcase pocket, a clean scarf. Soft, expensive, warm. My breath caught. I knew immediately it wasn't mine. There was no note, no explanation. Just the scarf, neatly folded, like someone had placed it there carefully. My heart pounded as I wrapped it around my neck. The fabric was thick, luxurious, the kind of things sold in boutiques I used to walk past without thinking. I looked around, suddenly hyper-aware. Nothing. That night, the cough got worse. I was sitting on the edge of my car seat, struggling to catch my breath, when someone knocked on the window. I screamed. A man stood outside, tall, well-dressed. His face was calm, professional. "Ma'am," he said through the glass, holding up his hands. "Please don't be afraid." I cracked the window an inch. "What do you want?" He glanced around before answering. "Someone asked me to check on you." My pulse roared in my ears. "Who?" He hesitated, just for a second. "A friend," he said. I shook my head. "I don't have friends." He studied me carefully. "You gave one something valuable." My throat went dry. "You're sick," he continued. "You shouldn't be sleeping out here." "I don't need charity," I snapped. He nodded. "This isn't charity." He handed me a card. No logo, no company name, just a phone number if you change your mind, he said. "Call this." Then he walked away. I sat there shaking, staring at the card. I didn't call. Pride? Fear? Stubbornness? Maybe all three. The next morning, my car was gone, towed. Everything I owned, my suitcase, my clothes, my documents, gone with it. I stood there in shock, my breath coming out in ragged gasps. This was it. This was the end. I sank to the sidewalk and buried my face in my hands. That's when a shadow fell across me. I looked up. It was her, cleaned up, hair brushed, standing straight, wearing my coat. And behind her, 3 black cars idled quietly at the curb. People in dark suits stood nearby, pretending not to watch. My heart stopped. She smiled at me, the same sad smile from before, but now there was something else in her eyes. Power. "Come with me," she said softly. "It's time you knew the truth." For a moment, I couldn't move. The woman standing in front of me didn't look homeless anymore. Her posture was straight, her hair neatly pulled back, her face clean and sharp. The coat, my coat, rested on her shoulders like it had always belonged there. And behind her, the black cars waited. Engines running, doors closed, silent, controlled. I looked from her to them, then back to her. You, I whispered, who are you? She didn't answer right away. She extended her hand instead. Come with me, she said again, her voice steady. You're not safe here anymore. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but something stronger than fear pulled me to my feet. I took her hand. The moment I did, one of the men in a dark suit opened the back door of the nearest car. The interior was warm, leather, clean, a different universe from the one I'd been surviving in. I hesitated. She leaned closer and said quietly, You trusted me when you had nothing. Trust me once more. I got in. The door closed softly behind me, sealing off the street, the cold, the life I had been barely clinging to. As the car pulled away, I looked out the window and watched my old world disappear block by block. No one followed. No one stopped us. After nearly an hour of driving, the city thinned out. Trees replaced buildings. Gates appeared. Tall, iron-guarded. The car slowed. The gates opened. And then I saw it. A mansion. Not flashy, not arrogant, just massive, quiet, and powerful. The kind of place that didn't need to show off because it already owned everything around it. My mouth went dry. The car stopped at the entrance. The same men stepped out, moving with precision, opening doors, nodding respectfully. Not to me, but to her. She stepped out like a queen returning home. I followed, my legs weak. Inside, warmth wrapped around me instantly. Marble floors, high ceiling, the smell of polished wood and something expensive I couldn't name. She turned to one of the men. Prepare a room, she said, and call Dr. Levin. She needs rest. The man nodded and disappeared without question. I stared at her. You knew, I said. That night, you knew. She met my eyes. I suspected, she replied. But suspicion isn't the same as certainty. Certainty of what? Of your character. I shook my head, overwhelmed. You took my coat, she smiled faintly. No, you gave it. I slept for nearly 16 hours. When I woke up, I was in a bed softer than anything I'd ever known. Clean clothes waited at the foot of it. My suitcase, stood in the corner untouched. Tears burned my eyes. She visited me the next day. This time, she sat across from me in a quiet room filled with books and sunlight. She poured tea herself. My name doesn't matter, she said before I could ask. What matters is what you did. I just gave you a coat. I said weakly. She leaned forward. You gave me your last defense against the world. She told me everything then. How she had built companies from nothing. How she had lost trust in people after decades of betrayal. How she had started walking the streets anonymously. Watching, listening, waiting. For proof that kindness still existed without expectation. You passed, she said simply. I laughed, a broken sound. Past what? A test no one knows they're taking. I stayed. Not as a guest. As a student. She didn't hand me money. She didn't rescue me the way fairy tales do. She gave me structure, discipline. Morning routines. Reading lists. Financial principles. Silence. Hard conversations. She stripped excuses from me the way life had stripped comfort. You were loyal to the wrong people, she said one night. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you dangerous. If trained correctly, some days I hated her. Some days I cried alone in my room, missing the simplicity of survival. Learning was harder than freezing. Growth hurt more than hunger ever had. But slowly, something shifted. I stood straighter. I spoke with intention. I learned how power really works, quiet, patient, observant. Months passed, then years. She introduced me to rooms I never imagined entering. People listened when I spoke. Doors opened, not because of who I knew, but because of what I had learned to offer. One evening, she handed me a folder. It's time, she said. Inside was a proposal, an opportunity. My opportunity. This is yours, she added. Whatever you build from here will be your responsibility. I looked up at her. Why me? She smiled. The same sad smile from the street, now warm with pride. Because when you had nothing, she said, you still chose to be someone. I took the folder, and with it, my life finally began again. I didn't know it yet, but the people who destroyed me once were about to need me. Power changes how people remember you, not because you change, but because they suddenly realize they were wrong. By the time my name started appearing in rooms where decisions were actually made, my past had already been rewritten by everyone who once abandoned me. People love success stories. They just hate being there before the success happens. 3 years had passed since the night I sat on a freezing bench with nothing but a suitcase and the last good thing I owned. 3 years since I chose kindness when logic told me to choose survival. I didn't become powerful overnight. There was no montage, no miracle check, no applause. There were mornings I woke up before dawn, exhausted but disciplined. There were nights I cried silently because growth hurt more than hunger ever did. She never comforted me when I failed. She corrected me. Emotion is expensive, she used to say. Control it, or it will control you. She taught me how money moves quietly, how influence hides behind humility, how real power doesn't chase validation, it waits for leverage. I learned how to sit in silence and let people reveal themselves. I learned how contracts are won before words are spoken. I learned how respect is earned not by demanding it, but by becoming undeniable. By the time I launched my first independent venture, I wasn't hungry for revenge. I was hungry for precision. The company wasn't flashy. It didn't trend. It didn't beg for attention. But it solved a real problem, helping overlooked people rebuild stability without pity or publicity. Investors noticed, not because I asked, because results speak louder than trauma. The first time I saw my name on a legal document as founder and managing director, my hands shook. Not from fear, but from memory. I remembered the woman sitting on a sidewalk, watching her breath turn into mist, wondering if she would survive the night. I promised her something then. I will never beg again. When the past knocked the call came mid-morning, my assistant hesitated before speaking. There's someone here asking for you personally. He says it's urgent. I already knew. Some wounds leave fingerprints you never forget. Send him in, I said. The door opened. My ex-husband stepped inside like a man walking into a memory he hoped had faded. He wore confidence the way insecure people do, too tight, too loud. His eyes scanned the office, landing on details he hadn't expected. The view, the calm, the control. Well, he said, forcing a smile. This is impressive. I didn't stand. I didn't smile. What do you want? I asked. He laughed softly like we were sharing a joke. Straight to business. I respect that. He sat without being invited. I won't sugarcoat it, he continued. I'm in trouble. Legal trouble. The same kind of people who applauded me once are backing away now. I watched him talk, watched how his hands moved, how his eyes avoided mine when he mentioned loyalty. I heard you're doing well, he said. Better than well, and I thought, given our history, it would make sense for you to help. I leaned back in my chair. Our history, I repeated. Yes, he said quickly. We were a team once. I nodded slowly. You're right, I said. We were. Hope flickered across his face. Then I continued. And you dismantled that team the moment it stopped benefiting you. Silence. His jaw tightened. That was years ago. Yes, I said calmly. And this is now. He leaned forward. I just need a bridge loan. An introduction. Something. I stood. I don't lend money to people who abandon their partners when they're inconvenient, I said quietly. And I don't introduce risk into my world. His face flushed. You think you're better than me now? I met his eyes. No, I said. I think I survived you. Security appeared without being called. As he was escorted out, he turned once, disbelief etched into his face. You wouldn't be here without me, he snapped. I didn't respond. Because the truth didn't need defending. The parade of apologies once the door opened, it never stopped. Former friends who didn't know how to help. Family members who had advised me to be practical. Colleagues who had quietly replaced me when I lost my job. They came with apologies wrapped in opportunity. I always believed in you. I knew you'd bounce back. We should collaborate. I listened, then I declined. Not with anger, not with bitterness, with peace. Some bridges aren't burned. They're simply no longer needed. The final moment, the opening ceremony, was held on a clear evening. No red carpet, no excess, just purpose. The initiative I had built was now public, focused on rebuilding lives with structure, not sympathy, training, accountability, second chances without shame. The room was full. Investors, leaders, media. I stepped onto the stage. For a moment, the lights blinded me. Then the silence settled. I once believed that losing everything meant I had failed. I began. But I was wrong. I paused. Sometimes losing everything is the moment you discover who you really are. Without the noise, without the masks, without the people who only loved you when you were useful, the room stayed quiet. I learned that kindness doesn't make you weak, it makes you rare. And sacrifice doesn't make you foolish, it makes you unforgettable. My voice steadied. The world doesn't reward desperation. It rewards discipline. And dignity always outlives revenge. Applause filled the room, but the moment wasn't for them. It was for the woman on the bench. The woman in the cold. The woman who gave away her last coat and didn't ask for anything back. I never saw her again. But I carry your lesson every day. Your lowest moment is not your ending. Your kindness is not your weakness. And the people who walk away when you're struggling will always come back when you're standing tall. The question is, will you let them in? If you were in my place, standing in the cold with only one thing left, would you have given the coat? Tell me in the comments. And if this story stayed with you, subscribe. Because some stories don't just entertain us, they remind us who we're capable of becoming.